So, if let me know if you can hear me or not. I'm gonna probably be a little slow on responding because it looks like there's a bit of a lag. So be a little patient with me. I've never done this before. It's the first time using this software, so but I'm gonna start drawing now. So this piece, excuse me, this piece that was requested was essentially a candle being held by two cupped hands. So we're just gonna try to like rough in some shapes here that are kind of pleasing. I want to kind of like roll with more of a heart shape, a little bit less kind of exact to what's going on in this photograph that we're using for reference. It's nice, but it's a little flat, I guess. I'm gonna have this kind of coming a little bit toward us, like it's kind of being shown to us. So, and I'm just kind of building out some shapes for these hands. Hands are funny, I've heard, so this is not me, this is not a brag, people like the way I draw hands. I think it's largely because I like drawing hands. So I want to be careful that we don't get something that's a little too phallic. So, you know, I could kind of go like a really tall, skinny candle, and the client will probably be able to dictate that as well. Some of the way that I can reduce some of this phallicness is reduce some of the fat in the palm there. I think if you kind of look at it as it is, it's going to be kind of phallic. So let's see here. And if anybody's in there, I would like for okay, so Rosamane, is that right? Good morning and thanks. Should be pretty easy. This client is awesome. They're very trusting and cool, so we'll just kind of give this a go. We'll just kind of tighten down some of the screws on this rough. Starting to kind of come together a little bit. You can kind of see putting some of the joints in this finger. I don't know how much wax they're expecting here. Part of me wants to do a lot just because I like drawing goopy stuff, but this is too nice of a design to probably want to get too goopy. We're not watching a freaking Brian Usna, Stuart Gordon movie over here, so we don't want to get too goopy, but maybe kind of taken. One thing when you're kind of doing a lot of these, like with tattoo designs, a large portion of the design is going to be editing yourself. So I tend to overdraw everything, and then I simplify it as needed. So like these wrists, we're probably not even gonna use them, but you know they may be useful to us. So I'm just gonna at the very least put them there and then edit them out if needed. So alright, so we're getting something here. I'll put these other fingers down here so they look like they're kind of supporting this other hand. Part of me wants to curl them up, but I think I'm going to be too busy. Alright, so let's get rid of what we've got down here. Drop this back, tighten it up a little bit more. I'm not going to do any finishes on this, but I will say I do want to kind of... They also want a butterfly. I'm not sure. So here's the funny thing, right? Like with tattooing, you got to be kind of flexible. Like they mentioned that they wanted something on their thigh. They did not mention which thigh, and frankly, it's not worth the effort to me to like. It's it's more effort for me to get the headspace to email them to ask them which thigh and then figure it out than it is to just kind of draw a butterfly and then flip it in case I have to move it to the other side. Kind of stupid, but it's more fun to draw than it is for me to send emails. So I'd much rather stick to that part of the process. There's a lot of like stuff I kind of take for granted. For those of you that don't know me, I've been tattooing for 20 years now, which is kind of crazy. Next year will be literally half my life. I started when I was 21 years old, so kind of a crazy thing to think about for me. So I trying to work out everything I'm thinking as I'm saying it is interesting even for me, because I just never verbalize all the little micro decisions or whatever the hell you could call them. Alright, so we're kind of getting something here. I'm going to switch brushes to just this stupid oval brush. It looks a little bit more calligraphied, and for some reason I like the line is a little bouncier, and I tend to prefer that. So I feel like I can get a nicer feel for how this thing's going to go if I can do that. So I think this hand is probably, we're going to just minimize it for now. I don't think I need it. I think all these designs back here, there's some comics back there. You're going to see, I'm going to stream some comics and stuff too, whether it's coloring or gray tones or I'm probably not going to stream lettering because I don't know. To me, that's when I write my own stuff and then I letter it, I do a lot of editing in that process too, so I have to think a lot, and then streaming might be a bit of a bear for me. We'll see. I don't know how much I'm going to even stream. We'll find out. Could be a thing that I like doing. Could be a thing that I end up not liking doing. We'll see. But if you're in the chat and you're watching or whatever, and you feel like chatting, it would be nice to know, I guess, who's in here, who's not. If there's anything that you guys want to know, any questions or anything like that, obviously feel free to ask. I'm pretty much an open book. I kind of don't believe that there's information that's secret in tattooing at this point, and particularly in design, which is what we're doing now. Alright, so hands, we're going to get a little bit more detailed on them now that we've kind of got this structure. I always kind of use these cartooning landmarks here. They're pretty overdrawn, like nobody's hands really quite do that. However, they kind of bring a readability to the thing, so I kind of tend to like to incorporate some of those more cartoony aspects, I think largely, so that way I can easily see the silhouette and the shape and the form of the hand much more readily. It's obviously a preference thing. Some people are going to smooth things out, you know, the more jointy, like, so the funny thing is these are real kind of pointy on the edges, so you're going to get a slightly harsher aesthetic when you do that, which is great for readability, but also can kind of kill some of the I guess some of the elegance maybe. You know, there's, you know, alternatively in tattooing, a lot of us tend to favor more of a Tibetan or like a ukiyo-e style look at hands, which are a little simpler. So like if a hand was kind of coming out, you know, this way, it would just be like a smooth, you know, smooth lines like this to kind of achieve a hand shape, which these very smooth, delicate lines tend to find favor with tattooers as well, because it gives us an opportunity to work delicately and still maintain like a tattoo-y aesthetic. I don't know if this is making any sense. You might be used to seeing them with like blue skin with like pink palms, you know, where you'd have like pink here and then kind of like a baby blue. I know nobody asked to see this part, but fuck it. I mean, screw it. I'm a tattooer, so I cuss a lot. So I don't know if that will get me in trouble, but you may have seen images similar to this before. You know, like that's another way that tattooers tend to approach hands, but the average customer isn't really keen on that, you know. They're kind of more into stuff that's slightly more naturalistic, little less risky. And from there to us, it's not risky, you know, but to the client, it often is. So we try to keep things in some sort of wheelhouse that they can be familiar with. which is cool, you know, and fine. Sometimes you get a Lancy in your pantsy, you want to do something a little bit more tattooy, but you can't because you're still dictated by the client in a lot of respects. Alright, so these hands are starting to have a little bit more. This thumb is massive, holy cannoli. I'll sharpen that up here momentarily. Alright. So this clearly is going really quickly, you know, it's not really a ton of crazy. Labor here, pretty simple in terms of design and what's kind of expected or wanted from the client. Let's see here. Alright. Oh, also I just looked up and saw my face. So this is my office. If you can tell, I've got like tons of reference books. I got these like reference guns because I draw comics a lot, and you know, there's always guys running around shooting stuff. So I got like fake plants. It's a hot mess in here. All kinds of stuff. Got a spooky mask right beside my head right here. All right, let's get a little butterfly. I'm gonna rough in this shape. This isn't me actually pulling any real reference. I'm just gonna kind of throw down like kind of like a rough tattooy sort of butterfly. A lot of times butterflies almost work more archetypal in like how you imagine them, not necessarily how they really look. I still will pull reference after I kind of get this rough silhouette in, but there's something about the, you know, just kind of the way that they're imagined that is quite useful, because it creates like a shape in the mind, you know. It's like years and years of seeing them on, I guess, on different objects kind of helps to kind of build them in your imagination. So when you see that sort of shorthand, it instantly kind of has a feel and a vibe and kind of what you're looking for. I'm going to do a second one here just in case they don't like the shape of that first one. Ooh boy, it's really zoomed in, holy smokes. And we will not be taking this all the way to finished, just because I am going to do the finish work by hand. I tend to like to kind of like nail things down. So check this out, right? If you look here, we're looking at the underside of this butterfly wing. You know, if I put some shapes in here or whatever, you'll be able to see that a little better. But if you look at this bottom, like they're kind of separated into two shapes, right? Like you've got the bottom wing and then the top wing. So they often overlap. They don't butt next to each other like this. They kind of go like 1, 2. But on the underside, this one overlaps a lot of times. And on the outer side, the top, like this one is on top. So like it's kind of funny how you'll get these. It's the same thing with like bird wings, where the way that the feathers lay are kind of like almost like kind of the opposite of what you would think, depending on which way, you know, you're actually looking at the bird, which is kind of neat, you know, and I think it adds an extra dynamic. And once you kind of, I think, know that rule, you can really break it and create some fun shapes for yourself, like when you're doing birds. Because, you know, the cool thing about birds, butterflies, things like that, is that they are as much mythical, I think, to us in our minds as they are like literal. So like if someone wants a, you know, a cardinal, like you want to draw a cardinal. You know, you don't want to like really mess with it in a way that makes it unrecognizable. However, if someone just wants birds, you know, like when you think about the Sailor Jerry swallow that's on every sailor's, you know, body as a kind of almost like a symbol of tattooing and of sailors as much as it is an actual bird. You can play with that shape a bit and get some interesting results. You know, or you're doing like I guess maybe mythical birds in terms of like phoenixes and things of that nature, you can kind of really start to play with the shapes of these things. So, okay, we're gonna go roll with, here, I'm just gonna make that a straight curve. I like that better, it's more handsome. A lot of drawing is intuition, not necessarily facts, if that makes sense. Alright, so we've got a couple butterflies, got a couple hands, we're good to go. Alright, sorry I got these sniffles. Not really, what in the world? We got a security alert. Alright, we're good. Alright, I think we're in a pretty good spot to start kind of like almost finalizing this. I'm going to tweak the these hand shapes just a little bit so they're a little bit more pleasing to me. The candle I'll probably leave pretty simple and straightforward. So as far as process goes, right, I'm going to just kind of, actually I'm going to zoom out so I can get a better overall view. Just going to kind of tighten this down. And then what my process is once I kind of get this done, I'll get rid of all this underdrawing, take what I kind of feel like is my final digital drawing, and then I'll print that in like a non-photo blue sort of situation. And then I'll just kind of, just kind of in a 30% cyan or whatever is what I'll set the lines to. And then after that, I'll just kind of tack it on paper. There's something about the vitality that I get in traditional materials like pen and ink and graphite and stuff that I think makes for really my best results. You know, I think that it could be debatable. So right here, right, so this is what I was talking about with this hand, these knuckles kind of being a little sharper. This would be a scenario where I would want to probably just kind of try to smooth this just a little bit and just kind of rely on the, so I built it with those harsher lines. Also, we don't need to cut this so much either. I built it with those harsher lines, but now I'm kind of like, not regretting it, I'm just kind of smoothing it out a little bit just to give it a little bit more of a slightly unharsh look. So the fewer, I guess you would call them T intersections that you get, kind of a lot of times the less harsh things look. Like same thing with like, you know, all these shapes, they kind of create a harshness because they cause the eye to stop, you know, versus like a single line, it just keeps the eye flowing. And that's just kind of one of those things that you realize intuitively over time, or you read in a book. You know, I've read a ton of books, so that can be maybe for another time we talk about that. I would say that drawing is my strong suit. In the tattoo process, I do nice clean tattoos. Like that's a huge priority for me. But there are people out there that can tattoo on a craft level. I always kind of liken tattooing, for those of you that have heard me say this a bazillion times, then just, you know, tune out for a second. But I always liken it to carpentry, where there's very much like a trade to it. You know, getting clean lines, solid fill, all that stuff, making sure that it looks intentional, purposeful, and beautiful. But it's really not like artistic in the sense that we would think of it as a super creative act. It's more like a process, like a trade. You know, where in carpentry, you know, like you're doing all this design and you're doing all this elegant thought, putting together this box, but when it comes down to making the cuts and fitting everything together, you know, a lot of times there's not a ton of like, you're not thinking creatively, you're thinking practically and on a craft level, like how do I clean this up and make this really beautiful and nice and tight. Like there's a precision, there's an earthliness to it, I guess, that's not quite so creativity is not the concern, I guess, and that's kind of where I get with tattooing is I spend all my creative energy here on the page, and then when it comes to time to do the tattoo, it's like I get into trade mode, where it's like I gotta make these lines nice and tight. Even my values, like I guess, you know, maybe that's more creative, but a lot of times I'm like just trying to make sure that my values, my lights and darks are nice and managed, and it's a lot of logistics going on the skin. If this doesn't make any sense, feel free to ask me what the hell I'm talking about, because I don't want to be running my mouth and have it not make any sense. Okay, so I think we're kind of in business here. I'm actually streaming this like ambience from YouTube. I don't know if it's showing up or not, but if you can hear this woodwind music. Alright, so I don't like this here, like right here. I don't know if my cursor is showing up. There is a drip that was coming down to close to one of the other drips, like as far as distance, and it was starting to create a flatness I didn't like. So I'm gonna actually move it up and then move the one next to it down a little further, and that way we get it slightly more uneven, which will create, I think, a little bit more of a dynamic look. One of those subtle things that makes me crazy in my drawings, or in other drawings. Sometimes when I see it, it's not like it ruins it for me, but it can be like, man, these are close enough to create a tension in me, and I don't like it. So I always try to remedy that in my own stuff if I can. Alright. So I guess, you know, it seems like there's a couple of people in here according to the YouTube data. And I haven't really mentioned what this channel is. It's funny because I even hesitate to use that term because I'm like, well, what the hell? I don't even know what it is entirely. It's just going to be a place where, you know, I do a lot of work, and I figure some people might like to see it, kind of simply put, you know. And so that's kind of the aim here, is just to kind of make this a place for people to, you know, kind of watch some of the inner workings of whether I'm making tattoos or I'm making comic books. You know, I can kind of do almost, it's funny, I can do every phase of comic book from, you know, like blank page to printed stapled book in my hand, right? Like, I know how to do that. But I don't know how to do all of that in the way that's most industry standard, right? So like as a letterer, I still use currently using Photoshop CS3, which I bought ages ago, and I think I've been using it for like 14 years now. I have not updated my Photoshop software since then, which is crazy. And I still use it to letter, which is also crazy. A lot of people use design software like Illustrator, which seems to be the most common. People will also use, you know, Manga Studio. I don't know how to use those softwares. So what I would kind of like to do is fail and stumble through learning some of those softwares, particularly since we're in an age where everybody's fed up with paying for subscriptions to Adobe and stuff like that. I think it would be kind of cool to use. I bought the Affinity Suite from Serif, that company Serif, and it would be my hope that I can kind of figure out how to letter properly in that, and it could be a useful resource for other people that are trying to get out of the, I guess, out of that part of the paying for subscriptions, you know, like, because it's nice to be able to just pay for software once and it belongs to you. You know, that's a pretty old-fashioned idea apparently, but you know, it's still one I maintain is good for me at least. So that's kind of what we'll be doing, is just making comic books, and I'll be doing stuff that I do really well. I'll also be doing stuff I don't really do so well, and you know, hopefully learning a lot. And who knows, maybe if I'm blowing it and y'all know what the hell you're doing, you can kind of be like, Brian, what are you wasting your time? You're an idiot, you know, like, do it this way, you bonehead, or whatever. And hopefully that could be a benefit to everybody. But, you know, as a guy who has been tattooing for 20 years, I've been working in comic books. I think I got my first job at Valiant in 2012, 2011. You know, it's been a long time that I've been working in both these businesses, and I've never really been, I don't really have much of a public persona. beyond, you know, I make stupid jokes about hardcore music or horror movies or whatever on social media, but I'm not extremely online because I kind of find it to be akin to brain rot for me. So I would rather dedicate my time. If I'm going to be online, I'm going to be working to something more useful, I guess, and this seems to be useful to me. Also, having never done a stream and just kind of ran my mouth while I worked like this, beyond at the tattoo shop, I feel like it could take its toll on a person's voice, so we'll see how that goes for me. Oh man, the background is blasting this Angelo Badalamenti track from the Twin Peaks soundtrack, which is a big favorite of mine. If anyone who knows me knows I'm a big fan of the Twin Peaks. Beautiful television show. If you've never seen it from the 1990s, I'm sure it's hard to escape its impact, but if you've been on the fence, it's a real delight. Contrary to what people talk about, how weird it is, it's also absolutely hysterical. So if you're a Twin Peaks fan, you know exactly what I mean. If you're not, man, it's funny. It's such a hilarious show. Alright, so I think we're kind of in business here. Let's take this off. So I think we're in a good spot here. Oh, I trimmed out that finger because I wasn't happy with it. Let's get this tackled. I am not loving it. So you can see here I've got this hand cupping motion, but it seems to be very one-sided. So I'm just going to kind of get rid of this and try to make it more equal, where it feels like it's kind of cupped properly. Like I don't mind this hand here, but I feel like it needs some support. So let's see what we can pull off here. Ignore the Dropbox from my wife there. Alright. Let's go. I'm going to lower this palm a little bit so we're able to get under here. So you can see I kind of even using the arrows myself just to kind of give myself some direction. Now this tattoo is not something I'm doing today. I'll be doing this tomorrow. I usually work 1 to 2 days ahead of time, largely because I have other tattoos I have to prepare for and other jobs I have to do. So there is just like a time management aspect to it. But then there's also just like that I don't like to get too far away from stuff because I like to be kind of dynamic with the way that I choose to make tattoo designs. I'm gonna get rid of these fingers too. We are cooking here, y'all. Alright, goodbye. Fine drawing, but didn't fit. So I'm really gonna try to sell how these fingers affect each other now. If you cup your hands together, you'll find that if you put some on the bottom, they're gonna affect how the ones on the top set. So I want to kind of really sell that. Alright, I think we're getting there. So let's go with spooky music. Those of you that know me at all, like if you came across this because of Twitter or X or whatever the hell they're calling it now, I've got this Patreon that I'm building, but you'll kind of notice that virtually everything I talk about, I've got like, I don't talk about much, y'all. I love talking about drawing and comic books. I love talking about religion and religious stuff. I'm a big religion guy. I think people take that one way or another. I would say don't make any assumptions there and think about me. Not because I don't want you to, but because I feel like you you might take it the wrong way when I say that. But and I talk about horror movies, talk about religion, I talk about hardcore punk, and I talk about drawing, and that's kind of it for me. And I'm kind of, my buddy Andrew always said to me, you know, I'm kind of the same in the house as I am out of the house. And I think he's right. So you're going to get this from me, whether you talk to me at a convention, you talk to me at my tattoo shop, you talk to me at my house, over dinner, whatever. I'm just always kind of the same dude. And hopefully that doesn't bite me in the ass on here. There's a reason also I don't say a lot online is because I have a big mouth and I'm always considering a heel turn for funsies, because it's easy to talk shit online. And all right, I'm liking this better. Let's see. Let's give this a go. Yeah, I like how this finger's kind of overlapping. Sorry, I'm getting so Aaron Level is my wife of many years, and she is sending me hilarious messages because she's very funny. I would argue funnier than me, which I haven't been particularly funny on this stream, and not always funny, but I can be quite funny. It doesn't ever stop me from trying. My Aaron, on the other hand, is... I'm a dude who's always shooting shots, always firing jokes, constantly. So, you know, I land several. She is like super high batting average, but doesn't swing the bat as often. So that's kind of the nice. I'm just gonna barrage you and hit periodically, and she's gonna be more. She's more like a precision jokester. So if she's ever around when I'm doing, she'll pop in every once in a while. I think she likes to hang out when I've streamed before, not on this channel, but you know, on other people's channels. She seems to be pretty good at hanging out and chilling, and she's pretty funny, so we'll try to get her in on here, and that way y'all can listen to her talk her shit, because she has some too. Alright, so I think we're kind of in a good spot here. Let me get this wrist. Yeah, so I don't like having wrists on here now that I'm looking at it. Well, maybe I do. Let's see. So the funny thing, right, about doing this is, sorry, I'm like looking at my own stupid hand. The funny thing about doing these types of tattoos is that tattooing really likes containers, like boundaries, things for the design to kind of end. It's not always great when your design kind of just seems to fade out into nothing. But this could be one of those exceptions. So I'm just going to kind of play for a moment with some of these shapes, see what I can come up with. So right now, like, it looks pretty simple, naked, cartoony even, and that's fine, because, you know, if you do your lines pretty delicate, you're already going to eliminate some of that, like, cartooniness, but then you're going to kind of get a lot of, you know, for me, a lot of the process is just kind of getting the, let me see, is just kind of getting the values in. I would imagine this is going to be a black and gray piece, so I'm just going to treat it as such. We'll see what we can kind of, might want color in the butterflies or the flame or something, but a lot of times people don't want to put a skin tone in the design. They kind of just get a little, they prefer. And you can get real heavy with these darks if you want to, if you really want to emphasize the power of that candle. You know, like, obviously, like, I heard one time someone say about lighting, which I thought was kind of interesting. It's really convoluted, but sometimes when you're doing lighting and you're doing complicated lighting on figures and stuff like that, a really interesting way to think about lighting is that, like, if you're, like, say our light's coming from here, right, from our candle, imagine that your eyeball is the center of that light, and whatever you can see has light on it. Whatever you can't see is in shadow. So I thought that was kind of an interesting way to look at lighting, and I actually heard that relatively recently. Sometimes you do stuff and you don't really realize you're doing it, and that's kind of was one of those things where it's like, oh, I think I've been doing that for a long time, but I had no idea how to phrase it or what was even going on in my own head. So it's nice to have other people kind of talk about things because it can reframe linguistically. Um, I thought about actually putting together a zine of like drawings that I did, but then with little phrases that kind of reshaped how I thought about drawing, just that were like little succinct things that I don't think that the person who told it to me realized how kind of powerful it was. Um, that really changed how I thought about drawing forever. That's kind of one of those things where I'm like, man, I think that could be useful for other people. Um, like simple things like one time Paul Azaceta is an incredible comic book artist. Not not a person I know from Adam, but I got early in my career, probably back in 2012. I don't remember what he was working on at the moment. He wasn't really doing it. He had just maybe finished some Spider-Man Gauntlet stuff. I saw him at a convention, and I asked him to give me a portfolio review, and he did. And he kind of pointed out something in my work that was interesting, where I was unafraid to just like fill areas with black. Like I felt like I had to put some details in there, or I hadn't drawn it enough. Some weird shit like that. And he was like, yeah, you should really like consider like pooling. He used the word pool, Pool, pooling your blacks together here. They're going to create a shape that's more appealing, and also give your eye a place to not focus, because it creates like a gray tone when you break it up like that. Kind of like how when you see people put like the dotted halftones on stuff. It creates like a gray tone when it should be black. And it was like, I'd never heard the term pooling blacks together, but it really did reshape how I thought about my spot blacks. It was really great. So that's like one of those little moments, I wish that I wish that art was able to be broken down in such simple terms a lot of times, that you can remember what you're doing in a single word. So, okay, so now we're kind of seeing this here, right? Like you can kind of get a feel for this. Now even though these lines are super simple, they don't feel like they're quite as lacking as maybe they would have just a couple of minutes ago. So I can really get in here with this shading, and you can't obviously take away in a tattoo like I'm doing right now, but it doesn't really matter. I'm just kind of building this up for you guys. I don't usually do this for myself, because I kind of know what I'm gonna do. But yeah, so I think like this is probably where we're gonna call it. I'm gonna leave the butterflies up to the client, but you can kind of see this now. So I'm gonna put a little bit more dark here, just because this is actually right on time, because I got a noon appointment. So, and it's 5 till 11 here, so I'm gonna gather my things and cook, get it done for the day, and then maybe come home and watch spooky movies. If anybody's watching anything scary, make sure that you hit me with what you're watching, so I can tell you if I think it stinks or not. All right, so let's. So yeah, here it is. This is where the process was. I'm gonna check my notifications to see if everything went all right. Also, let me know how you found out about my stream here, if it was from Twitter or what. Got a couple likes on this. Yeah, and we're gonna be doing these, so like if you wanna like kind of I'm gonna do them. I'm probably not gonna schedule them very often, but I'll try to. But if you can try to like, God, it's funny. I've never done this for a channel before in my life, so I'm kind of like, hey, if you would subscribe to this, I've never said that before. It makes me feel like a complete idiot. I'm not saying people are idiots. It just feels fake when I say it because I've never done it before. I guess that's a habit building thing. But and pardon the sniffles, by the way. It's been well, it's October in northern Kentucky, up near the Ohio River. So if you could subscribe, like, whatever you got to do there. Tell me that I stink and that I can't draw. I don't care. And yeah, we'll do this again sometime. I appreciate everybody's patience. And we're gonna end it. Peace. We're still figuring out how to stop.